Greetings, comrades, and welcome to the Eastern Border. Sorry for being absent for a few days. It's just that I have a theory exam of my driving school tomorrow, and then I'll be able to focus just on the driving part of it. That is, if I pass the exam tomorrow, that is. For one, the really difficult part for me is like not in the theory, knowing all the signs and everything. It's just the the leg agility needed to deep press clutch and press gas and then shift gears. Obviously, I'm learning with a manual stick because that's just how you do it here, at least. Well, mostly everywhere, and it's also actually more expensive to learn how to drive with an automatic one. But those are just side notes. So this episode might be a bit long, and I could be a sleazy bastard and cut it all up and just release tiny segments, but I'd rather not. I also encourage you, if you don't like the ads, just skip them. It's okay for me because it is what it is. But right now, let's just get to the news. We have a lot to talk about. We have news, and we have, of course, a bunch of interesting comments on what's ongoing there and how some so-called Western experts, I still don't know where they get their new stuff. Anyways, on the night of July 21st, the Russian armed forces launched a strike on Ukraine using missiles and drones. That was reported by Mykola Oleshchuk, commander of the Ukrainian Air Force. According to him, Russian troops used 3 ballistic missiles fired from Iskander-M systems and 2 H-59-69 guided air missiles and 39 Shahed type attack drones. According to Oleshchuk, Ukrainian air defense shot down 35 drones overnight, while the H-59-69 missiles did not reach their targets. The military administration of Sumy Oblast reported that on the morning of July 21st, Russian troops launched a missile and airstrike on critical infrastructure facilities in the Shotska district. The Russian Defense Ministry, in turn, reported that over the past night, the Ukrainian side attempted to attack objects on Russian territory using aircraft-type drones. According to the department, 3 drones were destroyed over the territory of the Belgorod region by air defense systems on duty, and 5 were intercepted in the Black Sea. But that's what they normally say, because every drone gets intercepted, everything's under control, but somehow they lose electricity and everything's damaged. And that's my number one complaint about a lot of Western sources who just, I don't know, they just take whatever Russian Defense Ministry says and they just report it at face value, and then it makes me confused because how many times they have lied constantly. Like all the time. They have destroyed more HIMARS than were delivered. And once the F-16s arrive, they're going to destroy more of them too than, ever Ukraine will be able to even operate. At what point do you stop just trusting the official sources because the official sources blatantly lie? I mean, that's just silly. And I know you guys are listening to me. If you rely on the mass media, just don't stop. It's stupid. Especially, please ignore anything said by New York Times, because I rewatched Chernobyl series recently, and apparently they even gave that a bad review. Just proves they don't know anything about anything, really. So it's all just a bit of a mess. Meanwhile, in the news, and I promise you that was the last of my rants. It's just that it's been pretty annoying sifting through and throwing out a bunch of script because of this situation. But we have news from, Boris Johnson. Yes, former British Prime Minister Boris Johnson apparently believes that United States presidential candidate Mr. Trump, if he wins, and I'm not kidding here, Boris Johnson really said that, could end Russia's war against Ukraine on, quote, the right terms for Ukraine and the West. He said this on a column for the Daily Mail. Johnson believes that Trump could offer Russia to withdraw to the borders of early 2022, and Ukraine could quickly become a member of the EU and NATO. And that is just I would like to know, Mr. Boris Johnson, where you're coming up with this information, because that sounds nice. It's just that I don't really believe that at all. The Russian Defense Ministry reported, by the way, that Russian military forces scrambled MiG-29 and MiG-31 fighters because of the 2 United States B-52H strategic bombers that were approaching the Russian state border over the Barents Sea. The report said, quote, as the Russian fighters approached, the American strategic bombers turned away from the Russian state border. Now, I cannot verify this, but this has been reported I'm pretty sure you'll hear about that on your own news if you live in the States. In the Shotska district of the Sumy region of Ukraine, 2 critical infrastructure facilities were destroyed as a result of Russian attack. The head of Shostka, Mykola Noga, called on residents to save water and electricity. And Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky may be reaching out to a potential future Donald Trump administration and is likely open to talks with Russia if the deal is fair, CNN reports, citing experts, including former United States Ambassador to Ukraine, John Herbst. That was just literally before I started recording at 1 p.m. today. Still no really clue about the veracity of this, but that's been the news here. But the most scariest news comes from Belarus this day. You know, in the last episode, we spoke about quite a lot about how Lukashenko has been sort of switching sides and how he's being yelled at by Z commentators, and we'll get back to that. But for now, there's a clear danger that EU should probably step in. See, in Belarus, German citizen Rico Krieger was sentenced to death. This was confirmed by the German Foreign Ministry on July the 19th. The sentence was passed by the Minsk Regional Court, according to the Belarusian publication Zerkalo, on June 21st. The publication notes that no official comments on this case have been received. It's not even known what actions Krieger was accused of. It's also unclear whether the sentence was appealed and whether it has entered into legal force. According to the Telegram channel Motolko Pomogi, Krieger is an employee of the German Red Cross, and he was accused, among other things, of participating in an extremist group, mercenarism, intelligence activities, and terrorism. The human rights organization Viasna reported that the case is linked to the Kastus Kalinowski Regiment, a Belarusian volunteer formation fighting on the side of Ukraine against Russia, which I have interviewed back in 2022. And that's just scary, and I hope that the people in the EU upper echelons could deal with this. Just a reminder that Belarus is the only country in Europe that still uses the death penalty, and over the past 10 years, the country has carried out between 1 and 4 death sentences annually. Zerkalo calls the death sentence for a foreign citizen an extremely rare case, so I sincerely hope that it could be mitigated. But on more of a regular note, because, oh boy, yeah, if I skip some days in making these episodes, quite a lot of news just pile up, and I'll try to be quick with this, but yeah, like I said, this is probably going to be bit longer than my usual news episodes. Former Russian president and now one of the most prolific popular Z authors, Dmitry Medvedev, the old alcoholic, wrote a notable post in which, quoting Simonov, he urged the Russian military not to take the prisoners of war. Neo-Nazis from the Russich Desherga regiment agreed with Dmitry Anatolyevich, but other Z channels have questions for our alcoholic friend. Here's what Dmitry Medvedev wrote, quote, "My comrades are discussing what the Ukrainian perverts did to our prisoner, referring to the Geneva Conventions known to the whole world. I was also well taught at my native university." Also, Ukrainians didn't do anything to any prisoners of war. It's just fake that they made up, but whatever. What he proposes is like beyond insane even by his standards. Carrying on. "There is no need to even write about it. There can be no mercy here. There is no room for goodness. Just kill, like Simonov, whom I've referred to many times. Remember, don't pity them. Don't pity them. No one. Have they pardoned anyone? Only total executions." Again, complete and batshit insane lie. But okay, Medvedev. But this continues on. It gets even crazier. "No choice, no words of mercy, no humanity, no clemency, no right to life for them. Execute, execute, and execute. That is only rights of war that the enemy deserves." And then he writes a little tiny poem. "So kill one, kill him quickly, as many times as you see him. Kill him as many times as you see him." It's just a bit of insane, but still, the neo-Nazis of the Russich regiment just agree with him here. Quote, "A reminder to our guys, don't take prisoners. The generals will change them, give them iPhones and send them home, and they won't even give you a shitty medal you don't need. No prisoners, no problems." But then there's the Z writer Starshi Eddy, also a bit of a Nazi guy. I wouldn't put him on the same level as Medvedev and Russich, but he's still very much up there. And he writes that Medvedev, shouldn't have posted this out of sheer practical reasons. Quote, Military blogger Dmitry Medvedev calls to kill everyone and not to take anyone prisoner. At least that's how I understood his post. I consider this is a big mistake, although I do not feel pity for the soldiers of the Ukrainian armed forces from the war at all. But in our time we took Germans prisoners, and by the millions. A man who realizes that there will be no captivity, when he raises his hands, he will be executed. Yes, he will fight with a despair doomed. So, out of sheer practical reasons. Z channels also discuss the situation in the Belgorod region, where the governor has announced the evacuation of some border areas and since July 23rd has restricted access to 14 settlements where the operational situation is extremely difficult. And this reminds me that Vladimir Putin promised to make a sanitary zone, except he promised to do that on the territory of Ukraine, but now it happens, on the territory of Russia. And these people are not giving any compensations, anything like that. No. They are just told that they'll not be able to enter their homes, and if they want to go there, they have to have special permission. They have to be followed by the army, all that good stuff. Of course, if they would be officially evacuated, then the Russian government would have to pay them. But as this is not the case, well, obviously the governor of the Belgorod region will not really do anything. But here's the comments from our pro-war side here. And this is from Ria Katyusha. Is Moscow waiting for Ukrainian flags in the border region? For understanding, dozens of FPVs fly around border villages per day, and a total of about 200-300 drones. If not more, work on them per day, in a month respectively 6,000-9,000. Only those that hit civilians or burn infrastructure are included in the bulletins. No one has written about on Nurna's burnt-out barn for a long time. Ukrainians are spending thousands of drones with the aim of not just destabilizing the border region, but with the aim of completely nullifying the targets of the strategic air defense forces. And Moscow doesn't want to see that or understand that. If the capital will continue to be busy with solving the issues of electric scooters and festivals with lolitas, samkas, and palm oil, pretending that the border regions do not exist, and leaving them to dig their own graves, they will appear. We understand that the Belgorodians, Kurians, and Bryanyans, who have been living in hell for 2 years, will immediately be written up by Yulia Vitezeva. We'll get to her later. She was a big kind of element this week, who fled from her hometown as traitors and spat upon by the guards, after which the split will become even stronger. But pardon me, for the whole special military operation, the question will become, what did we fight for? We thought for the purpose of denazification, but we got Ukrainian flags in Shebeniko and Tetkino. Are we really winning? And that's the big question here, because this is the moment here where Russians are actively trying to seek out stuff. And another friend of ours, friend in massive air quotes, but I had to go and start reading other people, since Igor Girkin is still in prison and not writing at all lately, because he's been incarcerated for a while. So Let's go through what Alex Barker Returns says. Quote, the creation of a sanitary zone on the territory of the Ukrainians apparently ended predictably, and so they decided to create a sanitary zone already on the territory of the Belgorod region. The old grandpa, who crapped his pants 2 years ago with his blitzkrieg, still can't learn one simple lesson. You can't attack with small forces against vastly superior enemy forces. The result will be highly predictable. And under the joyful cries that the Ukrainians are forced to transfer significant reserves to Kharkiv Oblast, they have to actually evacuate the entire border region. And this is the way they always do it. And this is just a bit insane, really, but not like these guys like Putin as much. Of course, another interesting news is Z community right now, as a whole, is terribly outraged at the initiative of the Rosgvardia, which, mind you, proposed to arm the officials of the Central Bank of Russia, the higher-ups and the lower clerks as well. Now, before I read you the comments of these Z people, because they don't understand what's going on, but I watch enough economy news to understand what's happening, there has been a long time, I'll give you an insight, which obviously they don't have. So, obviously, for a long time, there have been talks that the Russian people's savings could be frozen and just used for military purposes. You wouldn't be able to access your own money inside of banks. Recently, something similar happened with various savings in dollars, because, for example, all the companies that export anything outside of Russia, they're already forced to basically, if they have any dollars or euros, or any other foreign currency, maybe except rupees because they can't convert them anyways, and they have a lot of them, and they're useless. But basically, if you have dollars or euros or any other currency from other parts of the world, you're forced to convert that into rubles, forcibly. Literally, the foreign currency gets taken out of your bank account, and then it gets, what you get back are useless little ruble thingies. And this is happening with people who are also quite wealthy currently. But soon there might be rumors that, a lot of people who just are everyday people who not care about the war much, they could get uppity because they're about to lose their savings. At least this is what quite a bit of economists think that I've spoken to. Of course, the Z channels, in their utter idiocy and incapability of actually, put two and two together, they can't come up with this, and they simply don't understand really what's happening here. And especially this applies to central bank's head management, because this whole thing is just a mess. But Revenge of Goodwill writes, and he quotes the original text, quote, Rosguardia proposed to give the right to carry weapons to the central bank's management, deputy presidents and their advisors, as well as department directors and their deputies. In total, the list includes several dozen people, but the head of the central bank is not on it. Among the weapons that can be used, there are the Makarov pistol, Yarygin pistol, several types of Glock pistols, and even Keder, Vityaz, and Kiparis submachine guns. And the Revenge of the Goodwill responds to this. What the fuck are these guys for? Personal officers of the defense ministry can't carry. They're called drunkards or irresponsible as soon as someone suggested the military should be allowed to carry short barrels. And the DH are the poor and fortunate ones, humiliated and insulted? What do they have to defend themselves against on their rubles? Two majors, I think you also know from previous episodes. This comrade officer is a reminder to you and me, the peasants, of who the true master is, the one who has the right to carry his personal weapon on a daily basis. Troika writes, Kalashnikov Petonchi machine gun, the most necessary thing for an officer of the central bank. Strange that 120mm mortar is not on yet. Rybar writes on this. On the one hand, we can be happy for the heads of the Bank of Russia, who perhaps will now certainly feel safe. But in light of this, a logical question arises. Maybe Rosguardia will still remember about the servicemen in the zone of the Strategic Defense Forces, who would definitely need the same right now in the light of current events? For some reason, officers and contract servicemen still do not have the opportunity to legally carry short-barreled weapons, although there are plenty of potential real threats, from Ukrainian saboteurs to ethno-criminal elements. I'll get to the ethno-criminal elements and why this with Yulia Vityaz, why this is whole thing messed up together in their own weird form of racism. Everything ties together in my episodes, and I kind of like that. Moreover, there is no simplified procedure for obtaining at least traumatic weapons for such purposes either. For 2.5 years, the issue has not moved from the dead point, although there is nothing quite fundamentally unsolvable here. Apparently, because the authorized structure to equip a group of employees of the financial sector with weapons is a much, much higher priority. Zhizov Z writes, the question arises, who is the director of the Department of the Central Bank of Russia going to shoot back at after the bank left $300 billion in the West and shorted the ruble twice in 3 years? And the rest of us, haram, well, not everyone. There are peoples who can, they have customs, but the others can only hope when they circle a corpse in the street they will do it with respect. And, of course, I said that I'll be going back to Lukashenko, which is surprising that this whole death penalty thing actually happened there. I think that was pushed from Moscow because they continue to discuss this so-called betrayal of Alexander Lukashenko, who's been called a fake ally. Apart from the fact that Lukashenko took the Belarusian army away from the borders of Ukraine, he also has opened the borders for quite a lot of EU citizens, 35 countries, by the way. On the other hand, Z authors point out, what do you want from Lukashenko in the war? And if the war, and certainly, if even not ordinary Russians are not interested in winning the war, which, by the way, was what my article was about. Alex Parker returns, writes, quote, what a lovely thing. Well, just to confirm my posts. As part of the de-escalation and demonstration of peacefulness, Baťka decided to open borders to Austria, Andorra, Belgium, Bulgaria, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Vatican City, Great Britain, Hungary, Greece, Denmark, Ireland, Iceland, Spain, Italy, Cyprus, Liechtenstein, Luxembourg, Malta, Monaco, the Netherlands, Norway, Portugal, Romania, San Marino, North Macedonia, Slovakia, Slovenia, Spain, Sweden, Switzerland, the Czech Republic, Croatia, Estonia, Finland, France, Germany, and Hungary. Notice no Latvia, Lithuania, or Poland there. Just saying, we're still the extra evil peoples. But, if you live in any of these countries, I still would not recommend going to Belarus at all. But carrying on from this post. Taking into account the transparent borders between Russia and Belarus, this may lead to the intensification of sabotage and espionage activities inside the Russian Federation. A reliable ally, nothing to say. Rozgordievich writes, the freed reserves will go to the Kharkiv direction, but what do we want from the Belarusians? If many people in our own country don't care about the war, what can we want from them? It's unpleasant, but it's true. So, this whole mess has been really, really hurting them. But, I like nothing more than a bunch of pro-war vatniks just screaming about everything. The channel Kasper writes the following, quote, looking at through the eyes of a citizen of the Russian Federation, it becomes kind of annoying. We've been through this before, haven't we? Russia only has two reliable allies, the army and the navy. Looking through the eyes of a Belarusian, I can understand our leader. He does not want to involve our people in all of this, preserving Belarus as an island of stability and peace to the last. Although, let's not go too far. Calculate for the sake of interest, in percentage terms, what part of the Russian population is paying for the whole fucked up situation. Well, in Moscow, people do not even feel all the hardships of hostilities. Kaifulya, not otherwise. Belgorod, Kursk, it's somewhere out there, it doesn't concern me. The main thing is that a storm shadow or another drone doesn't fuck up my house. But you guys just hang out there. Channel Goodwill Revenge, about the same thing, writes, more than anything else, our neighbors who call themselves friends don't want to go to war, and it's not just about Belarusians. They are ready to say many things to declare eternal friendship, alliances, but not to fight. If at first there were still chances to join us and get a piece of the pie in the hope of an easy walk of the Ukrainian territory, then after they realized that the Ukrainians had a horn and would fight tooth and nail to the last man, they left us alone. Yes, they are worried. Yes, they are watching. Yes, ordinary people are helping. Yes, there are those who are fighting as volunteers, but the Belarusian army doesn't want to fight and won't. You fight and will watch from the outside. So all these statements from people standing on the sidelines and watching the fight are annoying, to put it mildly. And you just want to send a message in response to them. By the way, how's the loan repayments going? Yeah, and thank you, neighbors, for the fact that Ukrainians now have freed forces and they can quietly move to any direction from your border. In the best precepts of one leader, ... But now I want to go back to Yulia Vitezova. See, that's the thing. She is a person originally from Ukraine, Odessa. And she hates Odessa in Ukraine, and she's a massive traitor. She sits on Vladimir Solovyov's channel, reporting on various news, and she has the most annoying female voice ever. Just do not... If you want, you can Google her up, but you'll understand that it's impossible to listen to her shriek, basically. She also had said that she no longer wants anyone living in Odessa. She loves the city, but only because of the architecture and the pretty places. But she'd be happy if all of them would die because she has no pity for Ukrainians. Now, at the same time, you might have noticed this whole massive racism thing going on, also in my previous episodes and in this one, where it comes to all the migrants and everything. Because that's the number one issue why I say ethnic tensions will just increase, because the Russian ultranationalists, these guys are just raising in popularity insanely, and they're just super aggressive about this, and they blame, their biggest blame is that, all these Central Asian migrants, they're doing all the crimes, while men are fighting on the front, and, they want to make Russian diasporas within Russia, like Russian communities, and basically, they have even patrolled together with the police. They have massive hatred towards everyone in their country who is, from Central Asia, and they don't like even their Dagestani people, who are the citizens of Russia, by the way. And those crazy guys are the people who searched the plane turbines for Jews after the Israeli war began. So that was a bit crazy. And Yulia Vitezeva, she just she just literally spoke against this. What she said was that we cannot allow this whole sentiment against the migrants to continue because this is real Nazism, and the government should focus more on these ultra patriots and that she'll write reports, and that, this is kind of bad because this will lead to concentration camps. Sort of a voice of reason in a bit. Of course, she was then bashed instantly for like 3 days straight, and those are just too many posts. I literally had to cut this part out of this whole episode because otherwise we'd be here for another hour. That was just an insane backlash she received from various Z people, all these Vatniks. But the big problem is that one thing, they always accentuate the crimes done by migrants because they always want to blame someone else because the Russian world is always good. What they don't comment at all is how crime rate has massively spiked because of all the ex-prisoners, ex-convicts who have now been released back in society, especially the guys who were, in Wagner Group. They don't really consider how that has criminalized society. For them it's only, people from Central Asia who are migrants who are to be, forced forced out and punished for every little thing that's wrong in the country, despite the fact that most crimes are really made by, ethnic Russians who have returned after fighting in Ukraine. But Armen Gasparyan, a propagandist on the payroll of Kremlin, directly notes this extremely important feature of this pro-Putin thinking, this Z-Vatnik mindset, the ability to advocate directly contradictory things with equal enthusiasm. Quote, "One observation on the results of the third day of Yulia Viteseva's harassment. 2 mutually exclusive actions are being carried out in parallel. Shouting that Russians from the former Soviet republics are not allowed to come, are not given citizenship, and in general go back to Russia, all those who consider themselves Russian. And in every other post, they still call Yulia Vitez a fugitive Hohulka who should be deported from Russia. And nothing embarrasses them." And that is true indeed, because nothing really does embarrass them. Look, we're not talking with rational legends here. These people are propaganda embodied, and so is the Russian government. And still at the same time, for some mysterious reason, which I don't know even why, this is why I did the little rant at the beginning about how Western media should really stop listening to whatever the government says, because this whole incident illustrates perfectly what's going on there. They just want to blame something they just ignore reality. There's nothing in common with these people with common sense or reality. And at the same time, after bashing Yulia, who said, that maybe we shouldn't become total Nazis ourselves, I imagine her, suddenly watching this "Are We the Baddies" video clip from their British comedian guy. But still, nothing changes, and nothing will change, and this is going to criminalize even further. But at the same time, even though they're bashing Yulia because, she's originally from Odessa, where many ethnic Russians live, that gets branded her all sorts of things. At the same time, yes, they discuss also these very same Z authors who bash her for being surprisingly, in a tiny little bit, one occasion, constantly reasonable. They also talk about the problems with the integration of the Luhansk and Donetsk People's Republics into the Russian Federation. For example, these citizens, in air quotes, of the LNR and DNR who have gone through the war are called up for compulsory military service in Russia, or vice versa. Volunteers from Russia who fought in the ranks of this so-called People's Militia are declared deserters by the investigative bodies of the People's Republics. And in general, these new Russians are being treated to as somehow too much like Ukrainians. And this is all just normal. I mean, what did you expect? You agreed to fight for an oppressive, evil nation. And Trump's vice president candidate is also just, claiming utter nonsense, saying that with all this all this stuff going on, Ukraine can't win. No, Ukraine totally can win, and it will win. It's because, these people are just not competent. Alexander Khodakovsky, one of the largest voyenkors, these so-called war correspondents, writes, quote, "The process of integrating the Luhansk and Donetsk People's Republics into the Russian Federation is in full swing, but as practice shows, some peculiarities inherent in the new territories require not adaptation of local rules of life to Russian standards, but on the contrary, Russia's consideration of local peculiarities. We have encountered a serious problem. The published conditions of conscription into the army imply that a draft can fall under the category of persons who took part in combat operations, have state awards for heroic deeds, repeated wounds, but did not fight in the ranks of the Ministry of Defense without having a conscription service. Now, many of this category, who fought mainly in the units of the Ministry of Internal Affairs of the DNR, continue to serve in the security forces of the Russian Federation and perform service in combat tasks. And today they suddenly face the prospect of being drafted for compulsory service without taking into account their military biography, which many of them have several years of participation in combat operations in the most dangerous areas. Yeah, these are the poor mobics who were just swept through even from university chairs, given no equipment. A lot of them died. Those who survived, well, yeah, Russia just wants to completely clear Donetsk and Luhansk from all the people, whoever could live there. Carrying on. To say that this stunned the veterans is not to say anything. It seems to me that someone simply did not foresee such a situation. But it's never too late to make the right adjustments. Khodorkovsky. Now, of course, no adjustments will be made ever. Like, at all. Zero hopes of that. And carrying on. Quote from another Z author, because this subject, I think, is important enough to give it a bit of more attention. Quote, thousands of Russian volunteers who left for Donbas in 2022 have been defamed in the People's Republics as having arbitrarily left their units. Criminal cases are opened against them. They are put on the wanted list. For years, these so-called deserters have been fighting at the front, dying and losing their health, but for the state they are only the subjects of criminal cases and prosecutors' inspections. Even before the People's Republics became part of Russia, lol, I personally add just a massive lol here, volunteers from the big land fought in the ranks of people's militias. Their legal status was questionable. Often they were not even properly registered in their units and did not receive the necessary allowances. But people traveled for ideological reasons, so they tolerated such twists and turns of bureaucracy. And you know what? If you traveled for ideological reasons to invade another country and to literally defend fascism in the form of Putin's government, then yeah, you know what? I really don't feel bad about this. I just feel really nice that this is really lowering the soldiers' morale on the Russian side, and that this is one of the reasons why I think that Russia cannot win at all. I mean, even if Russia in some magical way manages to capture all of Ukraine, at this point I see that Russia's collapse is ultimately inevitable, but it will not come to that at all. I do not see any way at all how they could do this, but this is just so funny to me. Since January the 1st, 2023, people's militias became part of the armed forces of the Russian Federation, and the Russian volunteers were retroactively recorded in mobilized. Apparently, they so-called mobilized everyone who had ever fought in the people's militias. The mobilization was carried out by the Army Corps of the DNR and LNR people's militias, which is absurd and illegal in itself, since mobilization orders are drawn up by military commissions at the place of registration. In some cases, people were documented as contractors, but without signing a contract with the Defense Ministry and being sworn in. This is a monstrous absurdity and arbitrariness, the only purpose of which is to create the appearance of legal grounds for the indefinite retention of volunteers who originally went for a limited period of service. As a result, people who had been fighting in other units for a long time, who had gone home after serious injuries or at the end of their term of service, suddenly found out that the investigative bodies of the People's Republics had opened criminal cases against them for abandoning the unit. A soldier without an eye or one non-functioning arm, a soldier with shrapnel in his head, all of them have claims from the authorities. A soldier has served a specified period of time, resigned from his unit, and is already in the civilian life. He is still registered in the mobilized unit in full contraction with the current legislation. Those who do not have the ability to completely defend themselves soon receive a suspended sentence and find themselves in assault units, among other such fine men. Written by Direct Action Z. And again, I have to ask, how do you dumb cunts, I'm sorry for swearing, but at this point I just have to. You think that the Russian world you're fighting for is somehow better, or is it like the German government who think that there's two Russias, one fighting in Ukraine now and the other one who's magically holding something back that they need to protect for? Pro tip, you don't. Currently, you're defending Europe by aiding Ukraine. And if you're not capable of understanding that, well, sorry, but then you're not fit to be a leader of the government and you should be totally voted out instantly. But these people, they're also ideological idiots. Because they I think consider this Russia that they're fighting for in Ukraine these ideological useful idiots, right? They consider that this Russia is somehow different from the Russia that's going to take over. To them, this is not the real Russia. To them, it's some sort of weird ideal about everything. This is just crazy. Although an interesting part, which allows us to calm down a bit, is how Roman Saponykov, another oft-quoted Z author here, he recently wrote an interesting tiny little article about how the military on the front line is actually being demoralized even more, not even by this stuff, but by talks of imminent peace. And this once again reminds us that the war in Russia, the war in Ukraine, inside of Russia, and the actions of the Russian army in Ukraine are supported by a minority of Russians at all. Quote, rumors and constant speculation about a soon peace with, as he calls it, former Ukraine are extremely destructive. If I were the Western Psyop Center, dear people from Western Psyop Centers, take this into account. I'm giving you it straightly translated into English. So pay attention and do what this guy says, because this is amazing. Now, if I were the Western Psyop Center, I would purposely throw in such rumors according to the scheme: warming up, rumors about upcoming negotiations, designation of terms, reaching the top point of almost everything, wait, savoring the collapse of expectations, and throwing in a long, hopeless war that everyone will live to win, and so repeatedly every 3-4 months. If you're one of these people who is working at a Western Psyop Center, this is what you should do. It's amazing. He writes, such a scheme hits very hard on the morale of the guys in the front line, as well as on the passionate minority helping the army. On the other hand, the state, which itself talks about peace initiatives, cannot resist these emotional swings because the refutation will conflict the words about the need for peace. I have been asked about a speedy peace, literally in September, a huge number of times at the front. Some people are literally packing their bags and hoping to get to Crimea in time for the velvet season. Disappointment in any case will have an extremely negative moral effect. And we need to think about rotating the guys in the front line, at least take them back to barracks on the old border for half a year or a year. People will come to their senses, live an almost peaceful garrison life. And besides these morale issues from, racism and the fact that they're being tortured by these, so Putin statements about this so-called peace, they have another super pressing problem with the Russian army, which I take personally because I am one of those people who for whom this is a massive hobby. We're of course talking about the FPV drones. Ukraine is 100% currently winning the FPV drone war, which I'm very, very happy about. I've also spoken to these pilots personally, and boy, these guys train regularly. I'm really, again, as usual, I'm really afraid of what's going to happen when Ukrainians start joining in our drone racing competitions. I think we might start losing them. A large resource explains, Ryadovka published an article titled, "We are losing the drone war. Hopes for Chinese rear are in vain. We need our own mass production," which said in particular that there is a clear trend on the front. For one Russian FPV drone, there can be up to 10 Ukrainian ones. The article in the channel did not hang for long. Now the text has been removed, but it was reposted by dozens of military and close to war Z channels. Quote, "The front urgently needs drone countermeasure systems. Add that not only the already relatively familiar terms of REB, but also devices based on kinetic action, i.e. shooting them down, rather than on interference. And of course, the Russian armed forces need mass deliveries of a diverse range of UAVs, not just one model that will be purchased all year long, despite the fact that it can no longer overcome enemy REB means. Lots of devices at different frequencies, different form factors, with and without machine vision, and most importantly, manufactured in Russia. There is no point in hoping that purchases in China will allow us to completely cover this niche," Ryadovka explains. But there are interesting studies. The lack of Russia's own drones is not the only problem. Z channels regularly inform about the fact that Ukrainian FPV drones are improving day by day. Today, military channels are discussing another attempt by the Ukrainian military to shoot down a Russian helicopter with a drone. An unsuccessful attempt so far, but as the Z authors themselves write, only so far. Quote, "Me and my helicopter friend," writes, "Another attempt by the Ukrainians to attack our helicopter with an FPV drone. This time it's Mi-8. Just like last time, the attempt failed. The speeds are still on our side. But there are more and more cases of such attempts." Military informant writes, "This is not the first meeting in the air between manned and unmanned aviation, but so far there have been no successful of drones hitting helicopters. So far." The channel Deadheads writes, "The attempt failed, but there will be more in the future, and it's only a matter of time," to which I actually have to agree. It's only a matter of time before another attempt succeeds. Methods of counteraction need to be thought out now, but in general, they all were needed already yesterday. But before I move on to our few last points about all this situation here, what's happening, you see, this is the time where I like to remind you that, well, first of all, I'd like to say thank you to all our patrons and remind you that you can also become a patron of the show and support the show by going to theeasternborder.lv and clicking the donate button, or going to patreon.com/theeasternborder and, becoming a patron of the show, or going to our merch store, which is Fourth Wall, to which you can find the link, again, on the easternborder.lv home site. We're going to be maybe switching around the homepage things because Acast gave us some privileges. We are now considered an influencer. I puked a little in my mouth when I was declared that I'm considered that now. Ew. I'm a journalist. But still, there are many ways how you can support us. I think that those who listen to us through Spotify, through this Acast feed, they give you an option to kind of click on this and also donate through these other means. I don't know exactly which ones, but please consider supporting the show. I've been putting a lot of effort in, and despite my driving exams, I've been trying to give you the best news that I can. Now, we have of course more news, but I'd like to give you one little thing about the whole drone situation. Because these reports are not just about the helicopters. This is also about line combat. By the way, interestingly enough, one of the guys who was previously a friend of Igor Girkin then betrayed Girkin and then went to the front lines himself. He says that all these people, especially veterans of the Wagner group, they call this war Petosharnaya Vayna. Like, they compare this to be the Petoshar War. That is a reference of being a petuch in the whole Soviet prison system, the lowest caste. I have explained this many times. They don't like this war, where they consider this to be the bad type of war, where some sort of, as they say, video game player who's still living with his mom can just throw an FPV drone and kill an armed professional soldier. How is that fair? And they compare this to the movie Last Samurai, where peasants with machine guns just mowed down samurai with swords, and they don't like this idea. Well, let me tell you, that wouldn't happen if you wouldn't have invaded Ukraine. But still, it's kind of interesting how these people who all the time tend to speak about military advancements, they simply cannot accept the future because, once again, Putin's regime represents stagnation and just doing nothing really. It's just that how it operates. Ruski Tarantas shows the whole situation clearly. This was the first time I could not get to the line of combat because of the critical number of buzzing creatures in the air. Artillery fire waits out in an easy way 100 times. Waits out in an easy way 100 times I have done so. Drones? Oh no. They couldn't even get in my way. And I don't like this arrangement very much. Ukrainian naturally cuts and chops the supply routes of the advancing group, so everything goes so slowly, painfully, without deep breakthroughs of the soldiers of the enemy. You can forget such options for now. No one knows what to do. There is no universal solution. Point solutions have no therapeutic effect, and sometimes they're just harmful. You put a powerful REB, they switch to TAPICs. If they are available and communications are ready. If you put a weak REB, they start knocking it out, attacking with 2 or 3 drones from unexpected directions. What's the use of knocking the Ukrainians out of positions if you can't really take those positions by providing transportation and rotations? I think this is what a positional stalemate in the 21st century might look like. Oh yeah, by the way, when I say Ukrainians by these Z authors, imagine the very rude, quite racist swear word put in there. Like, I just don't want to respect them in any way, giving them full quoting thing. But interestingly enough, Z author of the channel Vozhak, whose text was proudly reposted by Rosgvard Lieutenant Colonel Zakhar Prilepin, or Prilupa Zalupin, writes that in Ukraine there are no ideologists of Nazism of the level of Dugin, Prilepin, Lavrov, and even more so Putin. And the late fire onto the real pillars was still, they still need to grow and grow. This is just amazing. Quote, even respected patriotic bloggers are trying to make of the deceased funny on one of the main ideologues of Nazism. Well, come on, guys. A feisty, stubborn Russophobe, yes. That was the ex deputy who died in Lvov. But she was never the main ideologist, or even one of the main ideologues. She was a town nut. She was given a platform as long as it was profitable. Then she was pushed back a little. I will reveal a terrible secret. There is no main ideologist of Nazism in Ukraine. There are no philosophers of the level of Dugin, which is just stupid, because Dugin's an idiot, and how can you denazify? Okay, whatever. Like I said, this illustrates perfectly this whole, they don't care about reality, they just blast things off. But I'll just finish this quote. No writers of the level of Prilepin, no politicians of the level of Lavrov. I'm not even talking about Putin. There is no such person in the whole world, which is not the case with unfortunate Ukraine. The main ideologist of Nazism in Ukraine is a collective image. He sits not on Bankova, but in Washington. Of course. Slow clap, slow clap. He lives not in squares, but in textbooks. They have no main ideologist of Ukrainianism. Hochhols, aren't you offended? Who do you fight for? They fight for their own country. Unlike, you dirtbags. Meanwhile, interesting thing happened just to show that there are still surprising things, and why I still consider that, Russia will collapse 100%, because slowly they're starting to notice something. You see, in Krasnodar, residents of several districts went out in protest. They even blocked one of the city's streets, protesting against, so far, only power outages. This was reported today by Beware News. Quote, every day the power was turned off, every day. There has been no power for 24 hours now. The heat is 40 plus degrees, because, it happens at the same time in the heat waves. 10 to 15 houses have no power. Each house has 600 apartments, said one of the local residents. As the publication notes, due to the power outages in homes, water is also lost, since pumping stations are not working. Many high-rise buildings have no gas supply, so residents cannot cook for themselves. According to residents, the responsible services do not respond to their calls and do not answer to any questions at all. And, of course, 2 military channels of these Z-idiots, well, they are rejoicing at the misfortunes of the residents of the Krasnodar territory, where people went on these rallies due to these regular power cuts. I'll start with a favorite of mine, 13, the criminal dude, who will go to prison even if he returns to Russia, not only in the Western countries. Quote, and what the fuck are you gathered here, my dears? Why not near the military enlistment offices? What have other people done wrong who are going about their business? Let me tell you something. Everything that is happening right now in the power industry is caused by the Ukrainian UAV strikes on our energy facilities every night, and the fact that they tell you every day that everything has been shut down and there is no destruction. It's bullshit. You'll be thankful the nuclear plant didn't get fucked up and the odds were stacked against it. The governor, or anyone else for that matter, is not going to solve anything, and he writes that in all caps, in this situation. You know why? Because they can't manage the laws of nuclear physics or the flight paths of enemy UAVs. Note, they cannot manage their own pockets and anything, really. I really am surprised how they can breathe, but, that's on them. But I have a great idea for the administration and the military. We can kill 2 birds with one stone. Right now, you can send there some OMON and the relevant services. Then the algorithm for all men involved in this is simple. Subpoena, military corps, storm Z. Women, just hand out some water, kick them in the butt, and tell them to go home. They'll have to worry about their beloved husbands. Go tell the people in Belgorod or Donetsk about your problems, resort goers. Oh, handsome men. Police officers detaining protesters. That's right. The only bad thing is that you are distracted from your real work by fools. Well, nothing while you fuck them up. In the meantime, somewhere else, 5 transformers will burn down, and when there is no light in the whole city, you'll thank this particular herd of Kuban sheep. That's 13. And then we have triplex and a bit shorter one. Quote, if what is happening in Belgorod region, Kursk region, where the blood of our peaceful people, lol, under enemy strikes is pouring out every day, is not able to awaken anyone, and the rest of Russia doesn't care about it, then at least melting refrigerators and non-working Dysons and Huyaisons mocking the Dyson thing, should deliver an alarmist signal to atrophied brains and souls, and people will start reacting differently. Not in the spirit of peacetime. Everyone knows me and take it or leave it to the emerging challenges, although there would be something to inform about. So here it is. If society, that impressive part of it trying not to spoil its nerves by immersing itself in reality, continues to live in a parallel dimension, not realizing what is happening, the war will unexpectedly knock on everyone's door in pitch darkness, and all these people will be running, sleeping on puddles of blood and shaking their heads. Oh, how could it be? Bring it all back the way it was. The hut on the edge is set on fire first, by the way. And here, to finish this one up, I would like to just comment on the fact that, starting the very beginning of this war, right? At the beginning of this war, all the people of Russian Federation were told that, no, this is a special military operation. This will be over in very, very soon. No one's going to get mobilized. You don't worry about it. People were even arrested for calling this a war. And there were no protests for war in Russia. There were tens of thousands of people actually protesting against the war. And they were all beaten up and put into prisons. And now, Russian government, who at the beginning of the war said, war is not your issue. This is not even a war. This is a special military operation. This is what people of Russia were told all this time, right? And now they're wondering why they cannot turn this into some sort of great patriotic thing and why no one cares or gives a shit. Well, they'll continue not caring until something horrible happens, and then they'll care very much about their own skins and break this whole cursed country apart. By the way, I believe that this war could, start ending when Ramzan Kadyrov dies, because I've heard some rumors, but I do have to investigate. But that's for another episode. We've gone quite a long time this time, really. So yeah, that's it for today. Hope you enjoyed the news, and oh boy, I really cannot take breaks. Recording these longer episodes, which are not interviews, really takes up a lot of my nerves and time. Please do support the show if you can. If you have any questions, you can join our Discord server or just type to us in the email, easternborder.lv. And до свидания, товарищ. And as always, remember, happiness is mandatory.